Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the All In Learning series. This is our fifth session, and we're super excited about this topic. We're overjoyed to see the interest in the value and role of research in adult education. And so if you're just joining us today, the All In Learning series is a virtual experience designed to kind of go deep in one particular topic. In adult education, we really want to increase community engagement in this issue and talk through some solutions that are happening across the field. So our goal is to showcase what works and learn from each other through this series, through this virtual series. If you're just joining us, we're gonna we'll talk a little bit about All In, but there's so much exciting content today, so we'll get to it very quickly. So each month you can hear All In and guest speakers, hear about successful advocacy and programming efforts that are in line with our National Action Plan for Adult Literacy. And we hope you have some key takeaways where you can drive access in your own communities to high quality literacy services. So my name is Sarah Casisio, and I'm the director of the Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network, All In, which is convened by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. And I welcome you to add your name and organization in the chat, as well as, where you're coming from, because it's great for us to know who's here. All right, so let's keep it going. All In is made up of 12 national organizations who are all working together to advance adult literacy, including World Education, who's one of our speakers today. They're one of our great partners, and many others that you may be familiar with. We're really working together to kind of reduce competition and increase collaboration and advance adult literacy as a whole. Our work is informed by the co-design National Action Plan for Adult Literacy, which was launched by Dr. Jill Biden in 2021. We're really thinking about multiple strategies to advance adult literacy, including raising awareness and advocating for change, expanding outcomes-focused research, which we'll talk more about today, supporting literacy instructors, catalyzing innovation in adult education, which there is so much happening, and part of our work is to get the information out there. And finally, engaging adult learners as movement leaders. We know the challenge, and people in this room likely know as well. About 28% of adults in the US are reading at or below a level 1, which is the lowest literacy level in the OECD data. And that's about 59 million people in the US who can only read short, simple sentences. And of that number, fewer than 10% of people are accessing our publicly funded services, which are so critical. We want to maintain them and expand them. But today we're going to talk about different ways to engage learners through online and hybrid ways, to reach more people than we can in our current system. So finally, and then we're going to get to our amazing content today, investing in the adult literacy really has the potential to impact so many other key policy areas that are important to this work. Health, right? Having a skilled workforce, having national security, both being able to determine fact from fiction, but also really tangible changes like people being able to pass entrance exams for the military, right? Like there are so many ways that literacy plays out in all of these different aspects of our life, children's learning, community safety. And that's one of the areas where there's actually a causal relationship between increasing literacy access and reducing recidivism on the outside, right? So we're really here to make clear the connections between literacy investment and all of these other areas in our nation that we can strengthen through literacy. So we'll get right to it. Today, we have an all-star studded cast talking about leveraging technology and adult learning knowledge building through the Create Adult Skills Network. And I'm going to pass it right over to Amanda Allstrand, who's going to tell us about the Create Adult Skills Network, how it started, how it's going. And each of our presenters are going to be, maybe you could each say your name and where you're from, and then we'll go into it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate you and Megan and the All In team for inviting us here and hosting us today. My name's Amanda Allstrand. As Sarah said, I'm with the American Institutes for Research, and part of the Create Adult Skills Network, which I'm happy to introduce you all to today. You're going to hear in a little bit from two of the research projects or representatives of two of the research projects that are part of this network. And that will be where we really dig into kind of how the research is going and what people are working on and finding. But my job is to just introduce you to the network, which works with these teams and a few others. So if we can go to the next slide, I just want to take a minute to share a little bit of background about the Create Network. We were funded by a grant from the US Department of Education in August of 2021. And this network, like others that the department had funded or has funded over time, are really designed to advance the field's understanding of an issue. In this case, we're looking at how ed tech can be used to build adult foundational skills and academic attainment. But this network and others bring together a set of research projects and partners from across the field, including Sarah representing All In and others that she showed on the slide earlier that are part of this network, with the idea that together we can take a deeper look and gain better understanding of these issues. What is happening at the intersection of education technology and adult foundational skill education? And how can we promote learning around that as a collective rather than one by one? So I invite you to take a look at our website and learn more, either now as I'm going through a couple things or later. But I know we're sharing some links in the chat, so check those out. The network has three primary goals to this end of bringing together people for more of a collective impact. The first goal is to generate knowledge. So the research teams that are part of the network are doing that in and of themselves. And then as a set of network leads, which I'll talk about here in a minute, the network is also doing some of this. So we are working to identify promising practices and ed tech tools. We're doing a review of literature related to these topics and publishing resources that are new knowledge for the field. We are also charged with facilitating collaboration across 6 different research teams and a set of network partners. These partners represent instructors, program administrators, other researchers, policymakers, and advocates. So some of the work that we do is bringing them together to talk about what they're learning and seeing and feed that kind of real-time information into the research process. And then our third goal is dissemination of learning from the outcome-focused research that Sarah mentioned is so important, but to disseminate learning from the research and promote use of it over time. So ultimately, this work is not only meant to expand the research base, but to find ways to connect learning from it to different users and audiences. So far, since we started a few years ago now, we really kind of started off looking inward across the research teams and with partners and working on together issues that the research teams might have been facing in designing their interventions, reaching out to partners to test those interventions, ways to engage instructors, ways to engage learners. But we took some time during that startup phase to really think about how to share experience in the field that could help and facilitate the research teams of just doing their studies. About halfway through the project, and now that we're in the later stages of our work, we're really starting to look outward. So experiences like this today are really important to our work to help spread the awareness of what this work is, invite people to learn more, and ask for your help in sharing what we find out as we start sharing it. So on the next slide, just briefly here, I've mentioned that, oops, can you go back one? The people and organizations that are part of the network, again, just emphasizing how critical it is bringing together the research teams and insights from practice. and policy and other research to the table. And I just want to shout out to the network lead is a partnership among AIR along with ABT, Jobs for the Future, and World Ed. So it's been a fun project to work on together across all these different groups. Briefly on the next slide too, I mentioned you're going to hear from 2 of the research projects that are part of the network, but there's 4 other ones, and I encourage you to take a look at what these other studies are designed to explore. As you can see, we have a wide variety of topics related to adult education at hand. So there's numeracy, skills assessment, language and civics instruction, reading, and then today you'll hear about foundational or durable skills and writing. So more to come from our future speakers here in a minute. On the next slide, part of our work, as I've shared, is to get the word out. So some of the tools that we have, you have access to the website. When you're there, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. Also take a look at the EdTech TA library that we have. We have been producing a podcast series interviewing experts from the field and sharing about the work that they're doing. If you have ideas of topics and people that you think would be helpful for us to share, please reach out. So just our job is to spread the word and ask for your help in doing that. So thank you for joining us today. And if you can share with your colleagues and friends, help them learn about the network too. Lastly, I just want to dig a little bit deeper into the EdTech TA library. This is a resource, and this is on the next slide. Again, you can access it via our website. We've got the link here as well, but this library is pretty unique in this space. It's designed as a specific resource for instructors and other adult education leaders to find tools on integrating EdTech or other digital technology into your instruction. We have been working on building out this library, and the World Ed team has really played the lead role on that. But finding and curating resources, we do have a brief review process to make sure it's something that is accessible to everyone and that you can access without charge. But this is a living library, and we're always in recruitment mode. So if any of you on today's call have a tool or resource that you'd like to share, there's information on how to do that. It's a quick form, and we can work with you through the review process. It's, again, very simple, but take a look there, and hopefully you'll find some things that are helpful for you. But if something else comes to mind, let us know, and we'd love to share it. So with that, I am turning it over to our friends and colleagues from Georgia State, and I think Daphne is starting us off. So over to you all. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. And it's a real honor for Jennifer and I to be here presenting to everybody about our exciting project. You can see some of the other core team members, and I just want to give a shout out to also the adult learners and their instructors for not only participating in our project, but also informing our project. And so basically what I would just want to briefly touch upon on the next slide is our rationale for this project. So I think most of us on this webinar know that a lot of our students have definite gaps in their writing skills, which prevent them from reaching their potential. They want to pass, the high school equivalency exam. They need writing for post-secondary education. They need it for career advancement. And yet there are very, very few evidence-based programs that really show how to teach writing to adult learners. And so we have 3 studies that I want to focus on today within our project. The first one is the digital writing assessment, which we gave in the beginning to about 86 adult learners, where we wanted some information about such things as their digital writing skills, their word processing skills, as well as their writing attitudes and experiences to help us develop our curriculum. We also gave a teacher survey on writing instruction because that would also help us inform our curriculum as well as PD. And we asked questions about their writing instructional practices, their writing attitudes, and so forth. We gave it to a small number of teachers in the area where our project is occurring, and we actually plan on doing this survey nationwide. And last but not least, our goal is to develop and test out and show the promise of effectiveness of an argumentative writing curriculum. And we're going to talk about each one of these studies in order. We're first going to hear from Jen about the digital writing assessment and the instructor surveys.
Hi, everyone. The first study within our project, the Digital Writing Assessment Survey, has, like Daphne said, really provided valuable information to us on the digital literacy skills and values of adult learners. In this survey, participants were asked questions about how they use computers to write for their classes and how they use computers to write in their personal lives. They are also asked about their goals for attending classes, their attitudes towards writing, and their daily writing practices. And then in addition to that interview portion, participants take a typing test, and they also complete a writing task in which they're asked to type a paragraph in Microsoft Word and then perform some basic formatting and editing tasks to that document. You can move to the next slide. So through the survey, we found that just about half of the participants had used Microsoft Word to write in class, and only about a third had used Google Docs to write in class. And then the typing test showed us that participants' typing speed was very low, less than half of the average non-professional adult's speed. And then we found that participants had difficulty completing basic editing tasks, such as centering text, using spelling and grammar checker, and saving a document. I'm going to the next slide. So even though participants demonstrated low digital writing skills, they did indicate in their surveys that they really valued these skills quite a bit. So participants reported to us that it was very important to them to improve their writing skills, and they connected improvement in these skills to their personal goals, such as furthering their education, getting a promotion or a different job, and improving in their personal lives. We looked at whether there was a connection between participants' attitudes towards writing and their demographic characteristics, and we found that the value that participants place on improving their writing skills was not related to gender, second language status, highest education goal, job-related goal, or their current writing behaviors. But we did find that some demographic characteristics did show a significant relationship with their value for improving writing skills. So specifically, we found that the value that participants placed on improving grammar and spelling skills is higher for participants in lower reading EFLs. We also found that the higher one's educational attainment, the greater the value they placed on improving their grammar and spelling skills. And then finally, the older the participant was, the greater the value they placed on improving both grammar and spelling skills and improving word processing skills. And so as Daphne mentioned, we use this information as we're developing our curriculum. The second study within our project is the instructor survey. It was an online survey sent to a small group of adult education teachers in the southeastern state, and it focused on their experiences with writing instruction. So the survey data suggested a few things. We learned that while most of the teacher participants indicated that they liked to teach writing and that they liked to write, they had received really little professional development in writing instruction, and they did not feel prepared to teach writing. They also spent very little class time teaching writing.
So I will now tell you a little bit about the curriculum, with Jennifer also adding in her input. So on the next slide, you'll see that we had different sources that helped us develop our curriculum. The first one, Supporting Strategic Writers, actually the authors are on our project. And what they really focused on was teaching argumentative writing from a very strategic perspective, and also emphasizing self-regulation. And we adapted their curriculum to work with adult learners. So we can go on to the next slide. And as I've said, we focused on how to write an argumentative essay. When we had proposed this project to our funding agency, IES, we actually thought we were going to teach argumentative writing with sources, because after all, that's what they have to do for the high school equivalency test. But after talking to our master adult education teachers, we realized that our targeted audience first needed to learn how to write an argumentative essay before adding the complexity of having sources to write about. So I'm going to now turn to Jennifer, who's going to give you a little bit more detail about the curriculum.
So in the early stages of the project, I was actually able to teach this curriculum. And so I wanted to point out some of the features that I found really effective and practical in the classroom for anyone else who's out there who is a classroom teacher. Some of those features include a focus on strategy instruction through Think Aloud modeling, using mnemonics for remembering parts of the writing strategy, and a focus on peer review and teacher conferencing. Those were really effective in the classroom. There's also an amazingly detailed instructor's guide that contained step-by-step directions for each lesson. For teachers whose planning time is precious, having a detailed guide was really essential to making the curriculum effective in the classroom. There's also a student binder that accompanies the instructor's guide so that students can follow along in class and then use those materials out of class once they finish the class and then beyond. And then finally, the curriculum includes example essays at different reading and writing levels so that teachers can select the examples that are best suited to the levels of their learners, because we know we have different level learners in our classes. Improving students' digital skills has also been a focus of the project, and we have found some free resources that have become embedded in the curriculum. The first free resource is Google. Teachers use Google Classroom for assignments, and students use Google Docs to write their essays, and in this way we are reinforcing those digital skills. The second free resource is typing.com. Instructors can register, create online classes, and then monitor their students' progress. And then for students, they take a typing screener, and then the lessons are based on their typing strengths and weaknesses. And the students have really loved typing.com, surprisingly. And then so students have really given us some positive feedback about the course. One student said, "I like the way writing was explained. Everything was so clear. The way that writing is taught is so different. I have never seen anything like it before. Everything is explained step by step from A to Z." Another student said, "The structure and repetition make the strategies automatic, so it's in your brain. Also, now I use Google Docs. Yay." And then another student said, "The class taught me how to brainstorm, how to think about topics as for and against, and how to put the essay parts in order." That was good feedback to have.
And so I'm going to describe a little bit about our professional development. It's a 3-day intensive kind of workshop that we give our teachers, and they are expected to be very active participants. We want our teachers to feel confident in teaching writing and teaching the strategies before they go live with students. So what the researchers do is in these PD sessions is they model strategies and key lessons that we have found are sometimes difficult for our teachers to administer. They go home and they practice for a week, and then they come back and they practice in front of us and get our feedback. We really want them to also understand the why behind the strategies and the hows of the strategies. And the PD doesn't stop. The help for the teachers or the support doesn't stop because the official PD 3 sessions have stopped. We give ongoing coaching, either at our realization that they need some help, or the teachers asking us for help in a certain strategy that they're trying to teach. If you can go, oh, you got it. Okay. No, sorry, you back up. I didn't realize you had it up. So one of the things that we teach is how to give constructive writing feedback. We found that a lot of our teachers are not used to giving this kind of feedback to students, so we incorporate that in our PD. And those are, some of the things that we include. We also teach students how to reassure their students who are anxious about writing or have writer's block, to reassure them that all writers, no matter how proficient they are, sometimes feel anxiety, sometimes have blocks, because a lot of our students think that those things are just unique to them. We also really stress how revising is not just for things like spelling or grammar, but also content, that the whole purpose of revising and editing is to make the message clear. And then we coach the teachers on how to read their students' writing, how to make written suggestions, and how to do individual conferences. And so you can see from this slide that the instructors really appreciate what we offer them. They get an instructor guide. They like the fact that review is stressed in our program before new content is shown. And, like one instructor had said, I thought going over the strategies daily was not going to work, but now with new students every day, it really helped. I see the value of repetition with everyone. Someone said they love the layout of the lessons, the suggested amount of time that we tell them for each activity. And we clearly say what the activities are. And then one teacher felt that it was amazing for higher level students, that it's perfect and in fact makes them soar. Our preliminary findings are showing that students are growing in their writing attitudes, their ability beliefs, their confidence about their writing tasks, and also they're improving in their writing quality, their writing quantity, and word processing skills. We've also learned some lessons so far that I thought might be interesting for you to know about. So I already mentioned the whole thing about teaching argumentative writing without sources before introducing sources. But we also learned how, we thought initially we had broken it down, but learned that we really need to break it down into concrete small steps with lots and lots and lots of repetition and practice. And that the students also become very engaged during brainstorming activities, discussion activities. Mnemonics help them, that we have in our program, but they need lots of repetition again and practice. Even if they learn the mnemonics, the strategies need to become automatic, and that takes a lot of repetition and practice. You definitely need to incorporate in your curriculum technology, how to use it. Not all students know how to use technology to write. And we have peer review in our curriculum. And the students seem to resist that at first, but eventually they came around to it and saw its benefit. Okay, Jennifer, you can take it over.
So I'm just going to share a few things that are on our website. Again, we invite you to visit our website. On the website, you can find a variety of resources for both researchers and practitioners, as well as links to publications related to our ongoing research. So the next slide, on our website, you can find a link to the digital writing assessment survey that I talked about earlier. You can see the actual survey that we used on there. And then on the next slide, on our website we contain a link to the Teal Guide that you may find useful for teaching writing to your learners. The Teal Guide is one of the resources that was used to help develop this curriculum. So that is also interesting.
Okay, so just real quick, you can see where we are. Most importantly, we're currently testing our 4th iteration of the curriculum. And if you can go to the next slide, please. And we plan to have different products, the actual curriculum, online resources for both instructors and students, professional development materials. And we hope through our pilot project that we're going to do next year to show initial evidence of feasibility and promise in authentic education settings. And last but not least, if you want to contact either myself or Jennifer or our assistant project director, Chris Miller, here are our email addresses that I'm sure Sarah will share with everybody. And I'll turn it over to Jen now to tell us about the next project.
That's great. Hello, thank you so much, Stephanie, and thanks Sarah and All In for hosting this webinar. I am speaking on behalf of the TSTM Skill Blocks Leveraging OER to Support Adult Education study. That is a cooperation between American Institutes for Research and my organization, JSI Research and Training Institute, the World Education Division. I'm going to give you a few highlights about the point of the study and what we're seeing so far. So the TSTM Skill Blocks research team explores, we're going to stay, can you go back to the last slide, Sarah? Thanks. The TSTM Skill Blocks research team explores how an application like Skill Blocks, which helps teachers locate and use free and open content, can support the implementation of a research-based TSTM framework. So I'll say a little bit more about that in a sec. But we are going to share some findings that I think you're going to find really useful and interesting to know. So before I get there, though, I just want to say that TSTM has been a federal initiative funded by Octave to support teachers in integrating skills that are durable. They stretch across learning and day-to-day tasks and the workplace, and they're really needed by students to be successful in all of these places. And then it focuses the learning of those skills within the context that you see on the screen here: civics, digital literacy, financial literacy, health literacy, and workforce preparation. And then we don't really address the teaching topics, but in the TSTM framework, they actually suggest that if you're using these topic areas and these skills, using these teaching approaches is a great way to have students learn them. On the next slide, you're going to see a little bit about what we mean by skill blocks. So Skill Blocks is a platform designed to support finding, adapting, and sharing high-quality OER. It does that by basically providing a structure which is based on competencies and aligns online activities or resources to those competencies so that teachers can go in and create playlists of those resources or those activities, which we call a blocks. So what you have on the screen here is a sample of a blocks. You can see a tile in there is an actual web resource that has been curated, evaluated, or created and evaluated and added to skill blocks. So teachers can structure these in a specific order and then either use it for their own organization or they can share it with learners. So you can actually, if you shoot the QR code or you get that that number code in there, you can actually see the blocks. All right, so the next thing I just want to share with you is a little bit more information about skill blocks. So we have over 10,000 curated, evaluated resources within skill blocks. And like I said before, we have, through this research, this development research project, we've been able to organize, create features that helps teachers organize, remix, and customize the blocks, and then share them with learners. So you're just seeing some glimpses of what these things look like in skill blocks. Okay, so how did we get here? Like, this is what you're seeing here is actually where we are now, and it's because of this project that I'm going to describe. So ever since, I don't know, like we got the grant several years ago. We're actually in year 4 of this 5-year study, and it's actually 3 discrete studies that inform each other. So the first part was led by AIR, and it was an implementation study on the Octave's rollout of the TSTM initiative, and done to learn how states had built capacity for TSTM and what teachers really needed to maximize the approach to education and the framework and the tools in their classrooms. The second aim has been led by us at World Education. That's a development or a design research study to actually inform, to use data and actual use to inform the features that we need in order to really make it possible for teachers to make the most of the free and open resource that's embedded so that they can more easily integrate TSTM aligned instruction into the work that they do with students. Then the third phase, we actually right in the middle of that, which is a quasi-experimental study in order to test out how those new features are making it possible. In between aim 2 and aim 3, we actually added a usability feasibility study just to make sure that we had those features to the point where they could make the most sense to teachers and learners. So just going to share a few findings. Okay, so remember this is 3 phases. And in the first phase, there was this implementation or reviewing the or evaluation of the implementation to date of TSTM. And we found 2 things that we thought were really important for us as we were designing and building and testing a technology. And that was that teachers voiced a need to have stronger connections, support and understanding how to connect these topic areas and the skills themselves to the instruction that they wanted to provide. The second thing was they articulated a need for making increased opportunities for teachers to collaborate. So we addressed both of these findings through something many of you have probably heard of called the EdTech Makerspace. You can just go 2 more clicks on the animation, just 1 more, there you go. Um, so that EdTech Makerspaces is service learning, and we bring teachers together to around a learning event where they learn how to do something new, and then in the process, they're providing service to each other and the field by creating content that is openly shared with among them and with and more broadly. So through this work, we had an EdTech Makerspace solely on understanding these subject areas. And through that, we co-constructed with some previously published materials, some subject area frameworks. Oh, just go ahead and stay back, Sarah. Sorry. I'll just cue you when to advance. Some subject area frameworks, which you can probably access in a link in the chat. And then also some design guides around how to actually create digital materials that are going to be shareable, that people are going to want to see. And then through these EdTech Makerspaces, we offered lots of opportunities for people to share and understand how other teachers were integrating TSTM into their instruction. All this resulted in lots of activity curation, activity designs, and many lessons added to skill blocks in a templated version that made it easy for other teachers to use. So next, we will go on to the next slide, and I'm just going to say a little bit more about some findings that helped support the development of the features. So also in this implementation study and through the EdTech Makerspaces, we realized that teachers really needed features to help them find and select resources. So we designed prototypes in Google Slides. We brought teachers together and we engaged them activities like the one you see on the screen right now, where we would show the current state of the software or the application, and we would lead people through an exercise using the creative use of Post-it notes and ranked choice voting and ranking priorities, like you can see with the dots on the screen. And then, so this is an example then, if you go to the next animation, Sarah, on how this activity resorted to explore skill blocks. So what you see on the right is a response to the prototype activity that we did on the left, where we have actually designed many features that help learners or helps teachers locate and support that helps teachers understand how they can evaluate and organize the resources that they find. So I'm going to get into a little bit more of those resources and then just in this next section of the presentation. So I want to say a little bit more about what our data said about searching for content. So through focus groups and questionnaires and working with teachers in these prototype discussions, we learned that teachers need a mix of affordances to support finding resources and activities because they might not have knowledge of the way skill blocks is structured. And just getting like a super long list is not enough to help them make good choices about what they want to see there. So we integrated multiple search options into the application. So teachers can search by keyword or filter, or they could actually choose a subject area framework like financial literacy, digital literacy, health literacy, and so on. We also have math, and we have very recently added reading. Math and reading are aligned to the CCRS AE standards. So you can, if you wanted to teach that, you could enter in CCRS AE reading, you could choose a topic or a skill, you could actually choose a level, and based on these inputs, you'd get a list of activities and resources that would support that kind of instruction. The other thing that is important to know about search is this explore skill blocks. So we know that people need lots of help in in making choices. So not a lot of teachers don't know like what the skills and what the content are of the TSTM framework. So we wanted to be really explicit in listing those things out so that teachers could make specific choices like, hey, I want to teach financial literacy and I want to teach about problem solving. So they could check those two boxes and they could get right to a list of activities that would do that for them. Okay, so then the next thing that we wanted to have teachers understand was how to share content. It was really clear to us that people want to share, but they really needed supports to help them do so. And what we learned is that they will share when the affordances of the software clearly show the process of sharing, and some extrinsic motivation also helps too. So in our case, it was participating in the EdTech makerspaces where they could learn about the work of others and get access to those materials. So let's just talk a little bit about those clear features that are needed for supporting sharing. So we found that it was really essential that there were ample tagging opportunities that would encourage teachers to identify the focus of the blocks they were making. So remember, the blocks is the playlist, that's the list of these linked resources. And we found that people were most interested in, like, when they were on the receiving end of that share, they really wanted to know the topics and skills and the learner levels, and they were using those inputs as the primary driver of the choices that they were making. So that meant we needed to make it really easy for people to enter this stuff as they were building a blocks. Um, then the next aspect is if you go to the next slide, the share settings. We needed to make it really easy for people to understand how to share. So, and we needed to provide multiple ways to do that. So you can see here under A, people can make their blocks public or they can keep it private. If they make it public, it's going to be available, searchable, and others can locate it. Under B, you can see that we needed to provide multiple options, including offline options like a PDF. The PDF is really useful. There are many resources in here that don't need to be done on a computer. And the PDF option actually came out of some exploratory conversations in corrections settings where people needed access to their reading content, especially, but can't use computers to support learning. So teachers can share PDF, they can share a QR code to their skill blocks, they can embed it in Google Classroom or share it in other ways using social media. Now, this is all about the crowd, and we believe in the power of the crowd in the open knowledge, open education movement. So we encourage people to make their blocks public so that by toggling on item C that you see here, so that others could actually take it, put it in their own blocks list, and adapt it to customize it for their learners. A big paradox in the OER movement is this idea that people want to shortcut to quality content, but are reluctant to take it on because it generally needs a ton of work to adapt it to their setting. So some of our work right now is in figuring out how to further customize skill blocks to make sure that we're supporting that location, saving, sharing, adapting with as much ease as possible. Alrighty, so on the next slide, we can see that teachers also valued quality. They knew what they were looking for and they were clear about what they were looking for, but they needed to be able to find it quickly, but they also wanted to know that there was some value there. So on the next slide, you can see how we did that. We incorporated some usage data on each of the activities. You can see here number 7, skill blocks. That's how many skill blocks this resource from Bobat Valley College is included in. And then when students complete a resource, if they've logged in, they have the opportunity to like it. And so far we don't have any likes or indications of student use, but the idea is that over time, we're going to, teachers will be able to see how other people's students appreciated the resource. And teachers can always go in and leave notes too. And I see that some people haven't seen some resources. That's because some of these resources are only for another couple months, are only going to be available to the test group in the quasi-experimental study. But we're going to be using information from that study to actually make sure that we'll use it to fine tune. The other thing that came out of this on the next slide is that instructors wanted to be able to create public profiles and then actually follow other teachers. And they would put trust in the blocks made by certain teachers. And by going to this community, the skill blocks community, seeing all the blocks that a teacher had created, and maybe even start their search by saying, well, hey, what has Billy Blocks made? Or, I've masked the names of these users, but Billy Blocks, if you see that one, that's actually, those are the blocks that we've actually made. And the change agent is another World Ed asset that you can check out too. But anyway, making it easier to create community it supports this idea of sharing. And then finally, I think actually, no, we've got two more. We created stacks because instructors said that they wanted to be able to organize many blocks, many playlists based on themes or topics. So you can see two examples here. One is a series of blocks that all relate to job search. The second one is a series of blocks that all relate to the Marshall leveled reading resource, which if you haven't checked out, I encourage you to. And then finally, we have addressed some general usability in features. So that's on the next slide, Sarah. Teachers indicated that they wanted to be able to monitor their learner progress. And in order for that to happen, we have to have learners log in. We have been continuously refining our login process to make that possible. And you can see an example on the next slide. So we have a single sign-on now where learners can log in with Google or with Facebook. These two things were chosen kind of by like what's technically available within the resources that we have, but also we know that a lot of teachers use Facebook, and so that came out in some early conversations about what was needed. And then the last feature that we are testing right now are learner dashboards. So if learners sign in, they can save a skill blocks to their dashboard, and that will give them a list of all the blocks that they have worked on, and then all of the resources that they've spent the most time on. They also get a time they get a report on the cumulative time they spent in skill blocks and then the number of activities they have completed. So that's where we are. All of those features were developed based on working with teachers, interviewing, observing use, and then iteratively making updates. We will have more updates probably to announce in the fall after we get through our data from the quasi-experimental study. And until then, you can follow the work at crowded.worlded.org/research or reach out to Stephanie Cronin or Nehananda at AIR or me or Jeff Gumas at World Education. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. And sorry for my slight delay. I was so into the presentation that at times I forgot. I apologize. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I haven't seen this feature. Oh, wait, I need to go to the next slide.
No worries. Actually, we complicated it with fancy animation. No problem.
I have to say, both of these presentations have been amazing. As a former high school equivalency writing instructor, love to see the focus on, teaching digital writing. I want to invite all the researchers and the research teams to come back. We do have a couple of questions to talk through in the chat. So if Jennifer and Daphne want to come back as well.
Apparently I've been blocked by the host to show video.
Dear. All right, let me end the show. That might help. But I wanted to, Daphne, we can hear you if we can't see you. We'll try.
Yeah, it still says the same thing. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, we'll try to get you back in just a moment. But one of the questions that came up on here, and I wrote the same thing. I mean, in 6th grade, I don't know anybody else, but I was sitting there with a piece of paper over my hands, having my teacher, tell me E, 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 D, 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 right? Like we had computer literacy class. And I wonder about what you and Jennifer and the team have found related to the writing digital skills that students are entering with. That idea that some people are digital natives and already know how to type was popping in the chat. So I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on that.
Yeah, Jennifer, since you taught the students and also tested them, if you want to talk about what you've been seeing.
I would say that their skills are all over the place. I think we assume that the younger students are digital natives and their skills are higher. And that's true to an extent. But they're also used to typing with their thumbs on their phones, and not necessarily typing on a keyboard. So keyboarding skills is something that is lower overall, for the adult education population. You'll get a random, 17-year-old who is a whiz and can ace the typing test, but that does not happen very often.
And in fact, I had typed in the chat that we're seeing that with undergraduate students too, that they type with their thumbs as opposed to typing the way at least I was taught to type on a keyboard.
Yeah, really important. And, just making the connection to the broader adult education and employment-based work. I mean, people need typing skills for their jobs, not in every job, but in many, many jobs, it is required. So good thing to think about there. And then Jen, a lot of people have been talking about the design of skill blocks, especially how user-informed it is, and how many teachers provided feedback all along the way, which was so cool to see the iterative process. I never actually thought about it like a Spotify playlist or something like that before, but could you share a little bit more on like the iteration of that and how you really are crowdsourcing in a new way?
Yeah, so the project that aim to is actually two components. One is the EdTech Makerspace, which is the service learning, and I see some names on the list here of people who were there and contributed to that. Um, that is what made the generation of the materials possible. We are also using that PD strategy in the past, as part of the Digital Resilience in the American Workforce Initiative, where we got teachers together to co-construct like a digital skills glossary that has all of the key language that teachers need in order to teach the language of using a computer. So we have been able to generate lots of steam and input on the actual feature development because we've been building a very broad audience through the EdTech Makerspaces. And essentially we design offline, we do these think aloud conversations using the Google Slides like I showed you a picture of. We make changes based on our analysis of the data, then we redesign and then test discrete features in classrooms, doing observation, take notes, make updates, and then launch again. All of this is part of an educational design process. Actually, DBR, design-based research, is a research methodology that supports iterative design of interventions. And while you're like learning immediately from the data that you're seeing as you're using and testing, you're also doing a deeper analysis along the way that informs broader observations about teaching and learning. And teaching and learning with, in this case, limited to how do teachers respond to open and free resources and figure out how to best implement them in their settings. So it's busy. Like there's so much data in the DBR process, and you have to separate it into what do I need to look at right now so that we can actually make a quality product? What do I need to kind of simmer and consider and put through deeper qualitative analysis? We're using grounded theory on this, and in order to get some deeper insights into how do people use OER? How do they choose to make technologies work in their classroom? Like what, just broader in general about teaching and learning.
So great. And I know people were very excited to see the student likes too, because that brings a whole another level of engagement here of like what are students responding to.
So we have a really interesting insight on that. So it turns out when you create a product or a tool that teachers can use. And then we see in early research that logging in is a barrier. So we allow teachers to just share that skill blocks code. You noticed probably if you visited it, you didn't need to log in to access that skill blocks. Well, it turns out when you do that, teachers are like, great, I don't have to log in. But so far, the way the technology is designed, learners need to log in order to register that like. This is an example of what we're seeing in our use that informs an update. Like we need to fix that so that anybody that logs in could actually evaluate, like, provide the thumbs up, and their use can register in that count of how many times that activity had been used.
Yeah, very cool. We'll be staying tuned to find out how all of this plays out, both of your research. And I want to also just note that there are 4 other projects involved in the Create Adult Skills Network team. They're all doing incredible work. We only had time to hear from 2 today. Amanda, the last question is for you, and I'm dropping into the chat a link to those 6 different projects that I'm referencing. Could you share a little bit about how having this network has, like, how it has impacted the individual research projects? I know, having worked on several research projects, you get real into your own research project sometimes and not always, aware of the development or the progress that others are making. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what this network has meant for adult ed research.
Sure, and I invite Daphne, Jen, and Jennifer to add to it. I think, part of the beauty of the projects that were funded was both the variety of topics being addressed, but also the entities doing the work. And so, sometimes, like you said, people are just do their work, right? So creating the chance for conversation to do so. We did work to build trust, I would say, across these research teams, and over time saw people being more comfortable with saying, hey, I'm facing this challenge and this question, and how to design a certain aspect, or how to analyze the data, or even just taking a chance to share what is going on across these projects has just opened conversation and ideas for different ways to solve the problems or new ways of thinking about it. People had a wide variety of exposure to adult education very directly, as represented by these awesome speakers today, and then people that were newer to the field and had done research in a topic, but maybe with higher education, and now they're applying it in a different setting. So there's just been really, really positive kind of collaboration and learning across and within the research teams. And then when you add the perspective of the partners represented by folks like you, Sarah, and folks from the field and other researchers, it just opens that dialogue to even more ideas and learning. I think, creating, as many of us, it's a small world, but as we try to make it even smaller and share information, that this is a step in that direction, but others might want to add to that.
I think you said it very well. I mean, we could spend hours talking about how great the network is and what it means to us, but I'm also looking at the time, and we probably don't have, I really do think you hit upon all the main points.
Me too. Yep, I agree.
Well, thank you so much. I know for All In, which is the Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network, it's been just incredible for us to have more day-to-day interaction with each other, understand what each other is working on and how it connects. So we've just seen more collaboration across different agencies as a result of having more regular contact with each other. And I think that I've seen that with the Create Adult Skills Network as well. And that we're double powering the network with All In and Create working together as well. So just thank you so much. I'm excited for the continuous collaboration that we have here, and the fact that we're not only sharing at the end, but there's been a lot more transparency about the learning in the process, which is exciting and hopefully a trend that we'll continue to see. So thanks for everybody who have, registered and will watch the the video after the fact. We'll be sharing out all the resources from today, including the video, as well as so many of the links that were dropped in the chat. So thanks to all of our presenters. It's been super fun and a great conversation.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks,
all.
everybody. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.